This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should, too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Staff writer Richard Sims just returned from a trip to Alaska on Holland America Line's Koningsdam, his first trip to Alaska. Was it your first to Vancouver as well?
This was a lot of firsts.
Okay.
It was my first time to Vancouver. It was my first time on a Holland America ship. It was my first time to Alaska. It was all kinds of firsts.
Let's get some pre-cruise thoughts here. What made you want to take this 7-nighter? Was this like a bucket list for you?
Yeah, basically. I've been wanting to go to Alaska for a couple of years. I had a trip planned 3 or 4 years ago with my sister, and let's just say family dynamics did not work in our favor, so that one fell apart. Then I had another one planned, and COVID hit, so that one fell apart. I really had gotten to the point where I was sort of resigned to the fact that I wasn't going to get to Alaska before all of the glaciers melt, when my next door neighbor, who I had, I usually travel by myself. I don't really like traveling with other people much, but she and I had gone on a trip about a year ago on the getaway and had a really great time. So she suggested this. And it just kind of snowballed from there to, okay, she did a lot of research. And you actually played a very heavy role in our decision because you had done this ship and this itinerary. So I was able to pick your brain a little bit. But overall, it was like finally going to Alaska.
Yeah, you definitely went all out, and we'll talk more about that later. And then you're in Woodstock, New York, so you had to take, what do they call it, a transcontinental flight going over from New York to Vancouver. So any pre-cruise time there?
One of the reasons that I typically only sail out of New York because I like sailing out of my home port. My attitude on that has changed a little bit since we moved to Woodstock because, it used to be that I lived 10 minutes away from the main port in New York City. Now, even to go to a New York City port, it's like 2-3 hours from Woodstock by the time you get there and you have to hire a car service. So it sort of has changed my perspective a little bit as far as travel. But this was a lot of travel because we had to drive to Newark. Then we had to fly from Newark to Vancouver, which is like a 6-hour flight. But we did make the decision, a really good decision, to fly in a day early, which is not my norm. And we also stayed in this amazing suite it's a Harbor View suite at the Pan Pacific Hotel, which if you know the Pan Pacific or you know Vancouver, it directly overlooks the harbor. So we had this wall of windows through which we could not only watch the ship arrive and depart, the other ships that came in before ours, we also could watch seaplanes taking off and landing. And it was an incredible, incredible way to start the day. And if you know anything about the Pan Pacific, it is right there. They came and took our luggage, took it to the ship for us. We walked downstairs and we were basically in the terminal. It was pretty convenient.
I stayed at a Pan Pacific in Singapore, and I believe it was under 100, maybe like $88. So I priced the one before my Alaska cruise last year. Vancouver, $699.
Well,
it's like, what?
I'm just going to tell you that we spent a little bit more than that.
Wow.
We had one of the nicest suites you could get. And, although I will say this, I am a big believer that if you spend $1,000 a night for a hotel room, you shouldn't be able to hear the people in the next room. I'm just saying.
That hotel also has a really cool pool deck overlooking the cruise ships. Did you get to hang out there at all?
We did not.
No, okay.
We got in very late. Relatively late. We were exhausted from traveling all day. We did also end up staying at the hotel again at the end of the trip, and I'll tell you a little more about that when we get there.
All right, so let's talk about embarkation now. Embarkation in Vancouver, it can be tricky at times. They kind of do things, I'm not going to say, a little backwards, but for the good, because you clear customs before you board the ship.
Yeah, it was really weird. And we didn't really realize how weird it was until we came back. Because when you come back, you just basically walk off the ship. You don't go through customs or anything, which is very strange. But the whole experience at the terminal was really nice. I think we were staying in a Neptune suite. The Neptune suite comes with a lot of perks. And that included sort of not quite the embarkation you get with the Haven or MSC Yacht Club where they, walk you upstairs and hand you basically to a concierge. But it was definitely an expedited embarkation. It didn't take us long at all before we were on the ship. We left our hotel. We lingered in our hotel room for a while, and then went down, went through customs and security, and it didn't take long at all. It was a pretty easy transition. When we were there were only two ships. It was us and a princess ship, but at a certain point, they had somebody going down the line and like literally checking with everybody because there had been confusion. It would have been really easy to get on the wrong ship. I mean, I suppose by the time you get up to the, where you're presenting the ticket, they would have stopped you and been like, no, this is not your ship. But yeah, it could be pretty confusing if you're not paying attention.
Since you were in a Neptune suite, do they have a guest, like a suite area for, like Carnival has the Captain's Club, MSC has the Yacht Club, Norwegian has the Haven waiting area?
Not that I know of, but it might have been that we just, by the time we went, we just kind of got on the ship. So, but I was not aware of anything like that as far as when you embark. Now there is, once you're on board, there is the Neptune Lounge, which is, a private lounge with a couple of very nice ladies there working as concierges who can help you, make any dinner reservations or anything else you really need. And there's always like food and sodas and a nice array of snacks and games. And it's not the biggest room, but this isn't the biggest ship. It's not quite as fancy as some of the lounges, like on the Celebrity Summit, in the retreat there, they had a very nice lounge. But it gets the job done, and it's filled with very helpful people, which is all that I need.
You make your way on board your very first Holland America ship. What were your first impressions?
Well, my first impression was that the dive-in movies have very good hot dogs, because for about 2 months before we got on board this ship, my friend Kimberly, I don't know why, she must have seen a video or something, was obsessed with the one thing she wanted to do when we got on board was have a hot dog. You know me, I'm usually like, let's find a bar, let's have a drink. No, we went directly to the dive-in movies and got her a hot dog and some fries, and they were quite delicious. As far as the ship itself, I will say this, it was a full sailing, but it never felt like a full sailing at no point. And that included on embarkation. I usually find embarkation day to be kind of a mess. Everybody's waiting for elevators and there's not enough elevators. And it wasn't like that at all. It felt very organized, very smooth. We did take a pass through the buffet just to, kind of see. And it was, as buffets always are on embarkation day, a bit of a madhouse. But other than that, everything went smooth, and it was a nice first couple of hours on board.
I remember I was in Qatar, was it back in March, I guess? And I just woke up jet lagged as hell. And my first text I received when I opened my eyes was from you asking me if the dive-in burger joint was open on embarkation day. I just got the biggest kick out of that.
There are not words to describe how obsessed she was with this. I'm happy to say that it was good, and I got the cutest little picture of her like chowing down happily on her hot dog. So, hey, whatever floats your boat. Everybody has their thing.
Before we get to your room, Holland America just launched this new sail away experience, I guess we'll call it. So how was that, and how was the sail away?
Yeah, so we were on the second sailing of the Alaska season. And on the first sailing of the Alaska season, they had rolled out a new sail away party, which is basically, it's sponsored by Tavengers. So they have two different drinks that they are selling. They're not giving away. But then they also have free appetizers that they're wandering around with, sort of taste of Alaska. Like one was like a salmon pate. I think another was maybe one of the green pea soup things that they're very famous for, that they serve on like days when you're in Glacier Bay and stuff like that. It was nice. If there was one thing I didn't like about it, it was that they had the sail away at the aft bar, which is also one of the primary smoking areas. And it got really smoky back there while we're sitting waiting to take off. So I didn't love that, but otherwise I thought it was a very nice sail away. They did the typical thing. They introduced the staff of whatever their version of the fun ship crew is. and they did some line dancing and stuff. It was pretty typical, but it was nice. It was nice to have some food served at the sail away party.
Yeah, back there on the starboard side, kind of there's the bar right there, and also the steps that go up to the deck above you. It does get very smoky, and it's so strange too because it's an outside area, but when you walk through there, I mean, it's worse than a Vegas casino.
It really is. It was worse than anything in the casino all week. I was sort of surprised because it is outdoors. I mean, it does have sort of some covering, which maybe serves as a funnel and keeps the smoke there. But yeah, I was super surprised by that.
So you make your way to your stateroom or your Neptune suite, sorry. So talk to us about your Neptune suite. How does it differ from a regular balcony? And what kind of perks come with that?
So with this, now, first of all, I should say we got a really good rate for two reasons. One, we planned way in advance. We booked this probably, I want to say 18 months ago. And also we were going very early in the season, and the early part of the season, because it's so notoriously wet and unpleasant, is much cheaper. We were told that the week before us, the sailing was miserable, thick fog, endless rain. It was just really miserable. We lucked out. We got rain just about every day, but it seemed as if every time we were getting ready to get off the ship, the rain just stopped. So that was kind of cool. The Neptune suite itself, the reason we booked these, and we booked two of them, one on each side of deck 5. And the reason we booked these was basically because of the balcony. The balcony starts at the aft of the ship. It's an aft-facing balcony, but then because you're on the corner, it wraps all the way around the side. So it is a huge balcony. And normally, if I was sailing to like the Caribbean or something, no big deal. It's nice to have, but you don't really need a balcony that big. But the thing here was in Alaska, no matter where the view was, we were able to get to it, especially since we had balconies on both sides. So, it just was incredible for the landscapes and if you wanted to sit on your balcony and watch whales or whatever, we had just the best views you could possibly have from a balcony. Perks that came with it, it had the Neptune suite. Mm-hmm. It had, the Neptune lounge, which I mentioned before. It came with all of the things that you would expect. There was an umbrella for bad days in the dressing cabinet. There was a big bathroom with a shower and a bath. It came with the Have It All package, which meant we had the drink package, and we had the internet package, all of that stuff. Tips were already included. So it's not quite. I forgot the best perk of all. The best perk of all is you have access for breakfast and dinner at what is called the Club Orange dining room. Mm-hmm. It's not a huge space. It's a relatively small space. If there's a problem with it, it's that they have too many foretops that can't be split apart. So it can be, during busy times, you might have to wait a little while because there's two people sitting at a foretop and you have to wait for them to be done. But the food in there was incredible. We planned to eat there once. We were like, once or twice we'll eat there. And she was going to go for breakfast. I'm not a breakfast person, but she was going to go every morning for breakfast. We ended up eating there maybe 3 or 4 nights for dinner because the food was excellent. The presentation was gorgeous. And the service was just, service throughout this ship was fantastic, but it was especially great in the Club Orange dining room. We had 2 servers and the main hostess, and they were funny and attentive, and it was like going to your best friend's house for dinner. It was amazing, and the meals were phenomenal.
Did you have the sea day brunch in there too?
I did. Well, actually, I did they had a couple of different brunches. Mm-hmm. One brunch, which I loved, was in one of the days when we were in port, they had an express brunch where there were only 2 options. You could either get a Caesar salad with salmon, or you could get fish and chips, or you could do what I do and order both of them. And that was amazing. It was so smart. They were able to get you in, get you out, and they, yes, there were some people complaining, if that's the only 2 choices, but it's not like you couldn't go anywhere else and get food. We also did go to the Sea Day brunch one day, which was, again, fantastic, and it featured fresh fish. At one point, we were talking to the chef, and he was talking about how excited he was about the fresh seafood that he had brought on that day. And it happened that we were going that night to Rudy's Celle de Mer, and which has, is a seafood based restaurant. And man, you would have sworn they just plucked that fish right out of the sea. It was so good.
Nice. So back to your Neptune suite there. Is that only like for the bougie balcony cabins, or can you get a Neptune suite if you wanted to do inside or a ocean view?
That's a good question. I think Neptune suites are mostly only bougie, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I don't think they have inside Neptune suites. It's not really like, say, the Yacht Club or on the newer Haven ships or the newer NCL ships, the Haven, where those are behind closed doors. There's a key card and you have to use it to enter. These are not like that. They're just accessible as, they're just at the end of a hallway. And they're spread through 5 or 6 levels of the ship. So it's not quite a ship within a ship experience, but it's sort of their version of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were just talking about it, but let's go back to food here, and we'll go back. So earlier you talked about the dive-in burgers and hot dogs up there by the pool. How about the Lido Marketplace? How was that as far as selection throughout the week and crowds?
Selection-wise, fantastic. I walked through there a couple times, even when I wasn't going to eat there. I just wanted to wander through and see what they had available, and they had an amazingly good selection, and it looked like it was rotated a lot. They had stations, so they had a salad station and a carving station, and just they had this great area where you could go and basically make a charcuterie board. They had all the different cheeses and meats. It was one of those situations where they are serving you. There were certain areas in the buffet where you could serve yourself, but for the most part, they were serving you. But there was no problem with you want 20 pieces of chicken? They'll give you 20 pieces of chicken. It was fresh. We ate there once or twice, and it was really loved the buffet. There was plenty of seating, and it was really well arranged. It did get crowded. We went in one afternoon during prime lunch hours, and it was really crazy. But, you work your way around that. We're usually smarter than that and just know not to go to the buffet at 1:30. I've always said you are never, ever going to go hungry on a ship. And that was definitely true here. I have to say, this was maybe the best food I've ever had over the course of a week. It was one of the best dining experiences at sea I've ever had, whether it was the specialty restaurants or we never really ate in the main dining room except for when I did the express lunch. Mm-hmm. But everywhere we ate was top notch.
How was the express lunch?
The express lunch was fantastic. It was exactly what you knew it was going to be. It was quick. They had plenty of servers, and they really were clearly trying to pump people in and out of there. And it worked. The food was delicious. It was hot because you're only making 2 things. It was fantastic.
Just back from a cruise? Let's talk about it. Email Doug at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Do you have a story or a tip to report? Let us know. Email tips at cruiseradio.net.
Specialty. You went to Rudy's, which is that a French cuisine?
Yeah, sort of. I am not the foodie. I like to pretend I'm a foodie more than I actually am a foodie. Mm-hmm. And it does have sort of a French vibe to it, I suppose. You're right. I didn't think about it at the time, but it was excellent. We had escargot. I love me some escargot. Mm-hmm. And I had just this delicious fresh blackened seafood and dessert. Everywhere we went, it turned out Kimberly's birthday was halfway through this trip. And I swear to God, they must have given us 12 cakes during the course of this week. Every time we turned around, somebody was putting a cake in her face. And that night at Rudy's, they had a particularly delicious little a little cake that was very special. It was one of their desserts, I'm sure. A creme brulee that was to die for. Just really excellent food. And I was not really all that hyped on going to Rudy's, to be honest. I'm not really. I would have said before this trip that I'm not a huge seafood person, but it turns out I'd have been lying because we ate a lot of seafood and I was very happy all week.
For years, you've been talking about the clothesline bacon at the Pinnacle Grill. Did you do the Pinnacle?
Okay, so here is the saddest thing of all. No, it's not the saddest thing. The saddest thing will be when we get to shore excursions. The second saddest thing of all, we did not go to the Pinnacle.
What?
So I always go to the steakhouse on the last night. But Kimberly was really not feeling it. And we had gone earlier in the week for her birthday. We had gone to Tamarind and we both really loved it. And I just kind of, I looked at the menu again at Pinnacle and I was like, other than the bacon, there was nothing there that really grabbed my attention. And there had been things at Tamarind that I really wanted to try and we didn't get a chance. So instead we went there. So I never actually went this is the first cruise in my however many I've done that I did not go to the steakhouse.
Well, how was Tamarind?
Amazing. Absolutely incredible. Just they also have, you can order sushi from Morimoto there as well. So we ordered, that's a little extra. So we paid extra. And I had on the menu for Morimoto's, they had a tuna pizza that was one of the best meals I've ever had. I mean, it wasn't a meal, it was an appetizer. It could have been a meal, but I made it an appetizer.
How would you describe this restaurant?
Yeah, sort of a high-end Asian fusion. It's a gorgeous space. It's also a really great place to go if you want to have drinks, whether you're having dinner there or somewhere else, because not only does it have a nice little bar with some really good cocktails, but there's also a couple of seating areas toward the back that you don't know unless you walk back there, that they look as if you've walked onto the set of Shogun. They're gorgeously decorated and hues of orange. It's a really, really great little area. Everything about Tamarind was top notch. We absolutely loved it.
Nice. All right. Well, let's talk about the entertainment on the 7-night cruise. How did it stack up for you?
A mixed bag. I don't think we even went to any of the main theater shows. I think I went to one for like 10 minutes and it just did not catch my interest. There was nothing about them even sounded interesting to me. They sounded like, basically typical shows. And there were much better things to do at night because, of course, they have the music walk. So we had B.B. King and the Billboard Lounge. And what is the third one, Doug? Remind me.
There's B.B. King's Billboard on board and the Rolling Stone Rock Lounge.
Right. And we spent most of our time in B.B. King. They had a killer band. There was this guy who was there every night. Just in this, he wore like these flowing shirts. They might have been, I don't know where he was from, but I do know he was the star of every single night. He would get on the dance floor and he would just didn't care who was out there, didn't care what was going on, didn't care what they were playing. He was just getting his groove on and we loved every minute of watching him. But the band was fantastic. And they had different theme nights and stuff like that. That was also where they held the Orange Party, where basically it's paying tribute to the history of the cruise line, and they encourage everyone to wear orange. We didn't just wear orange. I'm telling you what, we wore the orangest of orange things you can imagine. She was in a head-to-toe bright orange like jumper, and I was wearing a bright orange tiger striped onesie. So we got lots of compliments that night. That's all I'm saying. If we had stuck around long enough, we probably would have won best dressed, but we had early plans the next morning, so we didn't stick around for that. But there was just music everywhere, like everywhere you went at night, there was music. And what was amazing to me was that it didn't blend in from one venue to the other. I don't know how they did that. The weird thing is the music in, I think it was Billboard maybe, Billboard was right at the bottom of a staircase with the casino at the top. If you were in the casino, you could hear the music from downstairs. But if you were at BB King's, just, 30 feet away, you couldn't hear it, even though they didn't have full walls going all the way up. They only had partial barriers. I don't know who designed that space, but they deserve all the awards because they did an amazing job.
Okay, so we covered the show theater, the music walk area. Any funny comedians on board?
There was one really good comedian, and there was also a rather unique performer. Her name is, I believe it's Trisha Kelly. And I realized at a certain point that I had seen her on whether America's Got Talent or something like that. But her thing is she sort of tells jokes and does musical impersonations of, various singers. And she works funny stories into these impersonations. And I felt bad for her because the show, there was only maybe 60 people in the theater at the one we went to. And she was fantastic. I mean, she just knew how to work the crowd. The comedian was also very funny, but he was sort of, middle of the road, sort of told the same kind of things that you've heard on every cruise ship. Whereas her presentation was really cool. The other thing I really, really, really need to shout out here, because this was an Alaskan cruise, they had some incredible speakers, some incredible programs. We had our naturalist on board was named Dominic. He gave several He gave several speeches about where to go on the morning we're going to be in Glacier Bay, where on the ship is the best place to view, where to go if you want to have the people from National Geographic who are going to be coming on board point out the sites. They also had a presentation on the history of Holland America, which was amazing. They had a presentation on, they actually had a speaker come on board from one of the tribes who had many years ago been driven out of Alaska, and sort of Holland America is the only line that they actually work with because they've, sort of forged a bond over the years. Just incredible. I don't usually go to informative speeches. I'm sad to say, but these were just wonderful and so well done. And what really struck me as interesting was our cruise director would do these interviews with the naturalist, Dominic. And despite the fact that they have had these conversations 10,000 times, they made it sound like this was the first time they had ever presented this information. It was really, really, really well done and informative. And I think it's one of the things that when you read about the various cruise lines in Alaska, I think that is one of the things that kind of elevates Koningsdam in a lot of people's minds.
How were the sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
Fantastic. Like I said at the beginning, this ship never felt crowded. It has, one of the nice things is the Lido deck has a retractable roof so that even on, the days where the weather wasn't great, they could close the roof and people could still go swimming and use the hot tubs. And they had lots of classes and things going on there. There seemed to be stuff going on all the time. I kind of spent a lot of time in my room because I was looking, just, sitting on the balcony, looking at the views. But, Kimberly she went to bingo, and we both went to Deal or No Deal, and they did a very good job of keeping things hopping on sea days. The entertainment staff was fantastic.
You could be out doing anything you want to on the ship during an Alaska cruise, but sometimes just sitting on that balcony is the ticket.
What was really kind of neat about both of our rooms was they not only had, the wall of glass leading to the balcony outside, but on the side wall above the bed, there's another round window, like a porthole. So just wherever you were in the room, when you looked outside, you could see these vistas. And Doug, I have never considered myself to be a big nature person. I mean, and, a little bit more since we moved to Woodstock because I've come to appreciate it more. But there were at least two different occasions where I literally wept because it was so beautiful what we were seeing. It just, I will never, photographs, I took a million photos. They will never capture it.
No.
I will never relive that. But I am so grateful that I experienced that. I really can't say enough. If you want, go to Alaska, go see it.
So your first day was a day at sea. And what was your first port of call and what was the highlight there?
Well, this was a big disappointment. Our first port of call was Juneau. And this was this is probably the thing I was looking forward to the most. We were going to get off the ship, get on a seaplane, fly over the glaciers, go to the Taku Lodge and have lunch. We get off the ship and we walk to the woman who got the sign up saying, seaplanes in Taku Lounge. And she says, I'm sorry, we've had to cancel. The winds are too high. So that was just, I went into a mood. I definitely went into a funk. But we walked around a little bit and we found another excursion that we bought, not through the ship, that we bought through somebody on the dock, that was basically taking you out to the Mendelssohn Glacier. Now, there are two ways to get to the Mendelssohn Glacier. There's a city bus you can take, but if you take the city bus, you then have to walk about a mile before you get to the visitors center. So we took an excursion that dropped us off right at the visitors center. And then from there, we hiked about, I want to say maybe a mile each way to go to the base of Nugget Falls. And I'm a huge fan of water. I love oceans and rivers and waterfalls. So while this wasn't getting on an airplane and flying over the glaciers, it was still an amazing, amazing experience. We went right to the foot of the falls, you could just feel it in your face and the power of the water. And it was something I'll never forget. We could see the Mendelssohn Glacier, so, off in the distance. So that was okay. But for what started out as a crappy day, it turned into an amazing one. So yay.
Were there a lot of cruise ships in port?
Everywhere we went, there were a lot of cruise ships in port.
That's one thing I noticed.
There were so many cruise ships in port that when we were in Skagway, we pulled in the morning. We had long port visits, which was lovely. But we pulled in Skagway in the morning and we're like, oh, look, there's like 5 ships. When we went to see in Skagway, we went to the lumberjack show, just figuring, it'd be something silly and fun to do. And it was awesome. We come back from the lumberjack show and there are 5 ships in port, but 3 of them are different from ones that were there. So there were like 8 ships in port that day. It was kind of a lot.
Just to clarify, Skagway was that Ketchikan for the lumberjack or Skagway where the train is?
You're right. Because in Skagway, we did the railroad. You're completely right. In Skagway, we did the White Pass Scenic Railroad.
Gotcha.
Which, that too turned into an interesting adventure because, first of all, because we were there so early in the season, there was so much snow at the top. They said that usually by the 3rd week or so of the season, it's melted. It was beautiful. It looked like glaciers were on top of these mountains that we were going through. But we got halfway up and it turned out there was a rock slide on the track. So they stopped our train. The conductor gets off, the brakeman gets off, they do some things. And the next thing you know, we're going backwards down the mountain. And we went about halfway down the mountain to the point where the track splits so that another train could go up and clear the track. They went up, cleared the track, and then we finished our ride. So we got this like extra cool kind of feature that you don't usually get.
Yeah.
But it was definitely well worth it. You had recommended it as a must-do, and it was 100%. The only thing I wish we had originally booked, they sometimes sell, you can get sort of VIP cars on the railroad where, it's more comfortable and they have, it's a little more room, that kind of thing. We had booked that originally, but for some reason those weren't running that day. So we had to go with the hoi polloi. But yeah, it was great. That was well worth it. And then you're right. It was Ketchikan is where we saw the lumberjack show.
With you having to go backwards down the track, did that add any time to the excursion or did it still return to the same time?
We lost probably half an hour there because we had to go back, and they had to go back, at parts they went fast, but other parts they went kind of slow, especially around corners and things. And then we had to sit there for a while the other train went up and cleared the track. And then we went back on that same part of the track we had gone on. So we definitely, it added at least 20, 30 minutes to our schedule. In fact, there were people on the train in front of us who I was talking to when we were standing out on the, the little balconies that you can go on between the cars. There were people in the car in front of us who were very concerned that we were going to get back too late for them to make their next excursion, because they had booked like 4 excursions on the day, and they had booked them back to back to back with very little room. And they did, in fact, end up missing their excursion.
Oh, no. So you get back from your train ride, and then your last port you went to, it was 3 ports, right? Aside, because, you don't do Victoria because you're out of Vancouver. So you do Skagway, Ketchikan, Juneau. Oh, let's talk about the day in Glacier Bay.
Indescribable. I mean, that was... People debate whether you need a balcony or not. I would say that on the Koningsdam, you don't necessarily need a balcony, because you've got you've got lots of open deck space. You've got the crow's nest, which offers beautiful views. There's just views all over the ship. But I believe that when you are going to Alaska, if you can afford a balcony, you should get one. If you can afford a Neptune suite, you should 100% get one, because it just... I literally do not have words to describe Glacier Bay. Now, part of that is because I slept through part of it. I was not feeling well, and I laid down to take a nap, and I slept through part of the 360, because the ship goes into Glacier Bay, and then so that everybody gets great views and so you can see everything, the ship does like this slow 360. I slept through part of that like an idiot, but it doesn't matter, because everywhere we went. I mean, yes, Glacier Bay was definitely a highlight, and it was unforgettable. But even like sailing into and out of Vancouver was just gorgeous. Yeah, Glacier Bay and everything else about this trip. This is the best trip I've ever taken. I mean, it in some ways, I think, changed my perspective on what a cruise can be. It was really that spectacular.
And that's the thing, too, because before I went to Alaska for the first time about a decade or so ago, I was always saying, like, okay, yeah, whatever, it's an Alaska cruise. But the first time I went there, I was hooked. It's like, and it's very cliche, I realize this, but I'm going to say it anyways, about living in a postcard or breathing inside of a postcard. That's exactly what it's like, and then some. And like you said, the pictures... they do it no justice. It's
no
just
justice.
amazing.
They don't even come close. I was looking through my photos last night, and I was like, wait, where's the beauty that I saw? You can't capture it.
Yeah.
You're only the human eye can capture it. It also changed my perspective, because, as you know, all but this trip and one other, all of my trips have been out of New York. Mm-hmm. And I have never cared where the ship is going.
Yeah.
I have only cared about being on a ship. For me, that is what I'm there for. And this has really made me think, okay, you know what? I need to start thinking about places I might want to go on ships other than, the Caribbean.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And then how was your day in Ketchikan?
Ketchikan was fun. We went to the Lumberjack show. We really were just sort of like looking for something fun and silly to do. And we booked it. We didn't book it through the cruise line. We booked it directly with the show. And it was exactly what I expected and so much more. Mm-hmm. It's kind of silly, kind of cheesy, kind of tacky. But the guy who was hosting it, Lasagna Joe, was so funny. And the competitors really got into it, and they have a lot of fun joking back and forth with each other. And the whole thing is set up as like, Canada versus the United States, and they divide the audience in half and get you to cheer. And it was a good time. I mean, it wasn't as big and as grand as I expected for some reason, but the whole thing was a lot of fun. And then we went to like a crab shack, just not the big one, just, a regular crab place to get some crab, which was delicious, and wandered around town. It was a beautiful town. I will say all of the stops are sort of touristy. They all have the same shop selling the same Alaska crap. I, didn't really find myself tempted terribly by anything in any of the stores. And they reminded me a lot of walking through downtown Woodstock, which is filled with similar stores just selling Woodstock stuff. What made them special was these little towns set amongst these gorgeous, picturesque backgrounds. Mm-hmm. That's really what sells it. I do want to say one negative thing, and this is not a reflection on Koningsdam, nor is it a reflection on Holland America, and this is not exclusive to this ship or this line, but the spa was annoying is not even the right word. What most people don't realize is that the spas aren't necessarily affiliated with the cruise line. They are contractors who come in. That is, so you can go to guest services and complain about the spa, but they don't really have any control over it. But in this case, the spa was the people in the spa, especially the woman who was running it, was so rude that at one point I got a call from Kimberly, who was in near tears, needing me to come down and straighten something out. And it was just unpleasant. Mm-hmm. Now I will say, we got the thermal passes and we loved the thermal passes very much. I got a massage, one of only 2 massages I've ever had in my life. And it was amazing. I did fall for the post-massage upsell and ended up buying like $200 worth of stuff that I'm never going to use in my life. But I really would love to see cruise lines as a whole sort of take more control of these are contractors, but they are on your ships and they are an extension of you. And I think that there needs to be a little more control over the endless upsell and the frankly, like kind of rude. If you don't want to buy it, they're gonna be rude to you. So that was the one fly in the ointment of this trip. And again, we loved the thermal spa, had a great time, loved it, but could have done without the staff.
At the beginning, you mentioned that debark was very simple. So how was the debark process?
Really simple. There was one thing that kind of surprised me. So a day or two before we arrived, were to debark, we got priority packages, that said, okay, here's the Canadian form you need to fill out that nobody looked at. Mm-hmm. And then it had these black luggage tags that were numbered black 1 priority. So my assumption was that in the morning, we would be able to disembark anytime because we had black priority luggage tags. We weren't in any hurry because we were staying overnight after the cruise as well. So we went to breakfast and they start calling the luggage tags and they're like, that first they call green, then they call yellow. And I'm like, oh, black must be able to go just whenever. And I go to look at the chart and no, black is like the 4th color called. And I don't really understand that. What makes that priority? But I will say, we ate our breakfast, went back to our suites, grabbed our luggage, and walked right off. There was the disembarkation was so organized and just, maybe because we weren't trying to get off the ship first, which is when everybody's crowding and nobody pays any attention to what luggage tag they've called. But we got off like maybe 8:00 or 8:30, somewhere around there, and walked right off. It was so simple. And then again, customs, we just walked through. Somebody took our little sheet that we had filled out, and that was it. We were done.
So you were staying, though, the post night right there at the Pan Pacific at the cruise terminal. Is that something like Vegas where they say, if you want to check in now, it's an extra $50? Or did you check in early? They hold your bags? Like, what did you do until check-in time?
We got so lucky. We had talked to them when we were there the first night, and they were like, yeah, if your room's not ready, don't worry about it. We'll, and it probably won't be because you're going to be getting here early. Mm-hmm. We'll just check your bags. No big deal. We got there, and I was talking to the guy behind the counter. I don't know what I said, but all of a sudden, I must have said some magic set of words because he was like, you know what? Hold on 1 second. And he disappears and doesn't come back for a couple of minutes. And when he comes back, he's like, I got you a room. Here you go. Nice. And I was like, wow. So I wish I knew what words I said so that I could tell all of you to say them as well. But we were very lucky. We were able to go right up to our room and check in. And then we went exploring Vancouver.
Awesome. What did you check out for the day?
We went to the gardens, which are incredible. Even though it was a rainy day, they were so beautiful, and gave me many ideas for what I want to do on our lawn in Woodstock. And then we went to, I don't know if it's called the farmer's market or what, but it's a giant market. And it was incredible. And I did some souvenir shopping because there were some actual unique things. And so I was able to get, presents for people back home. But, and then we went back to the hotel and we really just relaxed. I don't think we had grabbed something at the farmer's market. So I don't think we even went out to dinner. And then the next morning we headed over to the airport and took the 6-hour flight home.
When you're flying out of Vancouver, I know you have to do customs when you're coming in. Is there like passport control or anything on the way out?
Yeah, but it was not difficult. It took like 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. It was a very low key, very simple process. Everything went well. We had access. We were flying priority, so we had access to the Delta Lounge or the Air Canada Lounge or whatever it is, which was nice, especially flying out there because we had a couple hours to kill at Newark Airport. Yeah. Which nobody should ever have to do. And but yeah, no, the flight was great. They had an amazing selection of in-flight movies, including Moana, which I had always wanted to see.
There you go.
So it was a good time. Yeah. So it was just things. I was prepared for at least one or two things to go wrong, especially since as we were flying back, thank God she did not tell me this. Kimberly was getting constant notices about news stories about Newark Airport suffering major calamities. There was one day when it basically shut down. There was another day where they canceled like 40 or 50 flights because they didn't have enough air traffic controllers. Thank goodness I did not know any of that because I would have been freaked out. But luckily, we were not affected by that.
Well, looking back here, do you have any first-time tips to offer anyone who might either be sailing in a Neptune suite with Holland America or going to Alaska for the first time?
I would say do the inside passage, which is what we did. There are two different routes. There's the inside passage and the outside passage. One interesting thing to make note of, which I was not aware of before I got on board, and Doug, shame on you for not making sure I knew this. But when you go the inside passage, the casino is closed a lot of the time because you have to be, I think it's 12 nautical miles away from shore for the casino to open. And when you're going through the inside passage, you are not 12 nautical miles from shore. So we got on board, and the first night, I think the casino was open for like an hour, and then there was a sign saying we're going to be closed all day tomorrow. The last night, it was closed the entire night. A day in the middle, it was closed like 7 hours. So I definitely didn't do as much gambling as I normally would do. I tried to fit it in as best I could. But that is definitely a tip. If you are a gambler, know that going through those passages, the casino will not be open. So you will have limited opportunities at which to give them even more money.
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this trip for you?
The first thing that comes to mind, other than the views, which will stay with me forever, the first thing that comes to mind is Nugget Falls. That wasn't even on our agenda because that was the day we were supposed to go on a seaplane. But as someone who is just so in love with all things water, it was an incredible, beautiful experience. Even something as simple as like sitting on our balcony and, Holland America gives you blankets and we had bought coats and sitting under our blankets, drinking, coffee in the morning and just marveling at, and this isn't even when we were in like Glacier Bay or anything. It was just like, a normal day in Alaska and marveling at how absolutely stunning everything was.
Yeah. No, it certainly is. Well, in closing here, your final thoughts of Holland America's Koningsdam.
I'm so glad we picked this ship. I'm so glad we did a Neptune suite. Again, I said it before, but if you can afford a balcony for Alaska, do it. Save money elsewhere. Don't buy the drink package, whatever, but get a balcony. Do you have to have one? No. But will a part of you regret it if you don't get it? Yes. Especially if, like me, it's probably the only time you're going to go to Alaska. Spend the money.
All right. Staff writer Richard Sims about his 7-night cruise to Southeast Alaska out of Vancouver on Holland America's MS Koningsdam. Thank you, man. And glad you had a great time.
Thank you. And I'm so glad, thank you for helping us plan it. You were a big part of it. So really helped a lot.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,